Yo, what's good, man? So this story's happened a couple days ago, actually. But they keep bringing it up over and over. They're just wearing it out like a dead horse. Odell called out the double standard of race, basically in the NFL, and it's crazy that in these racial times, especially when the NFL is out here talking about racism and Black Lives Matter and yada 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 yada. But he talked about the double standard of when quarterbacks like Tom Brady have sideline outbursts and how they curse out their teammates. It's called leadership or passion. But when a Dez Bryant does it, or Odell or Cam, the media, the white sports media that controls it, they like to vilify these players for having outbursts. Now you could spin it any way, and you could say, well, Odell's kicking football nets and stuff is a little more self-driven than Brady chewing out teammates for pre-snap penalties. And they did respond with a zero penalty game the next week. So you could kind of put a spin on the leadership factor. But it's all about race at the end of the day. This is what it is. And I personally don't have a problem with it at all. I'm an emotional guy to a certain degree. I've broken stuff at work. I've thrown stuff. I've cursed out people. Nobody is a saint. We all are sinners and we all have emotions and we're not perfect. So to expect these athletes to be role models and to be like robots, to never get angry, never show. I mean, you could look at a football game from 1972. They barely showed the sidelines back then. You had NFL players literally doing drugs on the sidelines. Hollywood Tommy Henderson used to play for the Cowboys. He used to drink lickable cocaine. He used to put cocaine in his in a cup and would drink it through a straw. Like you don't know what kind of sideline antics was going on back in the day. Because back then, before HD TV, it wasn't so focused on. They focus so much on the individual players now than they ever have before. And it's like Barkley said back in the early 90s, I'm not a role model. Just because these athletes get paid millions of dollars and they on your television once or twice out the week, that they're not role models. I mean, Michael Wilbon on PTI was like, "Oh, I was so disappointed in Tom Brady. I looked at my son and I said, that's not how you act. You do not act like this." And I'm like, first of all, why was your son up even that late? He need to be in bed. Second of all, y'all got to stop looking at these athletes as role models, especially if you're a father in your house and your kid's life. Like, I love my dad to death. Deion Sanders, Allen Iverson, Michael Jordan, when I was a kid, those were my favorite athletes, including a few wrestlers. But they weren't my role models. My dad was my role model. I seen him get up and go to work and get money every day. You know what I mean? You're supposed to be your kids' role models. I think it's real lazy parenting to sit here and depend on LeBron and Odell and them to be role models for your children. Should they act professional? Of course. And for the most part, they do. Odell's had a couple of slip-ups. Brady's had a couple of slip-ups. But my personal input on it is, who cares? These are, what I mean? Everybody gets emotional from time to time and has, random outbursts, or you just get mad and show emotion. You're not a robot, bro. I remember they got mad at Cam because after he lost the Super Bowl, the biggest game of his life, he probably knew he would never get back. And he was pouting in the post-game interview, and he could hear Chris Harris Jr. laughing in the background from the Broncos. He got up and walked off. A lot of people probably would have. The only reason these players even do these interviews after the game is because it's in their contract. They don't, a lot of times, can you imagine having to talk to the media and having the microphones in your face after you lost a game? You know what I mean? Or let alone a championship game? You see it in the NBA. Did we not see LeBron chew out J.R. Smith in the finals a couple years ago? He was looking at him like, yo, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, it happens, bro. It's sports. These are not robots. These are human beings. To expect them to never get angry, never get emotional, I watched that whole Bucks-Bears game. Without a dog in the race, I was pissed off because I'm like, dog, every time, there was one drive where they literally threw a flag on every single play. They had 12 penalties, the Bucks, I believe. And on one drive, they had like 7, 8 penalties in a row. And it was like 3rd and long. They converted, and then they took it back because of another pre-snap penalty. And then the old lineman, the center, had a headbutt personal foul, and that added on to it. And that's when Brady chewed him out on national television. I said, yeah, I would have chewed him out too. Now Odell was upset. I guess the other week, what was it, Sunday, he had like 2 catches for 25 yards. He didn't get the ball enough. Personally, it didn't matter. The Browns were gonna lose regardless. Once they couldn't run the football, that was a wrap. It didn't matter if Odell had 10 catches. They weren't gonna beat the Steelers. The Browns are like the Steelers' little brothers. They weren't gonna win that game regardless. I can't really sympathize with a receiver pouting about catches over a guy pissing off, getting mad because his O-line is just racking up pre-snap penalties. But regardless, he's got a point. It is a double standard when it comes to race. Tom Brady is one of the only few white quarterbacks that I've ever seen really be emotional like that. But it is what it is. It's a new era, and like you gotta human. You know what I mean? People are human, dog. Human. You're not a robot. These athletes, I think these football players, they're supposed to get up every morning, lift weights, go to film study, watch more film, go to meetings, practice, go eat, practice again, do it again tomorrow, play a clean game, make every single throw, make every single catch, run every route correctly. I remember the NFL was so strict, they just started allowing players to do touchdown celebrations like a year ago. They used to penalize guys like Chad Johnson for that. You know what I mean? Like it's the robotic culture of the NFL is to me the real issue here. There's nothing wrong with these guys showing emotion. Nobody's getting butthurt over it. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Hockey, hell, they let guys fight in hockey. You know what I mean? Like, I think you let these guys be themselves and be who they are. Because I guarantee you, if they do this on camera, on television, there's no telling how they act amongst each other in practice when there's no film. I remember Steve Smith punched Ladarius Webb in the face in training camp when he first got to the Ravens. Things happen. You got a lot of testosterone in that locker room, man. And all 50-something guys, 53 guys are not going to get along. They're all not going to agree with each other. Guys makes mistakes. Guys get called out. It happens. But Odell's got a point. A lot of white media doesn't want to admit it, but he's definitely got a point. He's telling the truth. He has plenty of meltdowns also. But they definitely highlight it a lot more. But Brady to me gets a lot of he gets a pass, but similar to LeBron, he's often the most celebrated athlete in this sport, but he's also the most scrutinized. Because I mean, hell, they gave him slack for a whole week because he forgot it was fourth down. You know what I mean? And then the week before he threw 5 touchdowns in one quarter or something like that. It's levels to the criticism on both ends. But Odell was saying, I'm pumped at this point. I really don't care to keep making myself look like a good guy to the world and all that because of who I am. I got pulled out of the game. He got pulled out of the game because it was a blowout with 8 minutes left and you were still trying to get stats. But he goes on to say the coach said it was the best decision. It was 8 minutes left. And for me, I would rather take my ass whooping like a man. I would rather take my win the same way. I want to be out there until the last whistle competing. Yeah, I don't think it's good enough to do that. Then he goes on and says, I'm kind of over trying to play the right thing because I love him to death, but there are people who have plenty of rings that are considered the GOAT, and they do things on the sideline, and other people do things on the sideline. They get away with it, and this is classified as passionate because they may have, because of their legacy or whatever it is. So he was taking another shot. And then he goes on and says, I don't care if I have 0 rings, 12 rings, or 20 rings. I love this game of football. And I'm not going to continue to keep dulling myself for the world to feel like I'm mature or whatever you would like to throw in around. I'm always going to be me, tired of losing to teams, just ultimately want to win. One day when it's all said and done, we will clearly see that. But in the midst, and in the meantime, while we're at it, I will not. This fucking writer was bad, but but yeah, Odell went on and said his whole article. That was something somebody actually put on Twitter. That's not the actual article. But yeah, Odell's got a point, and the media. But like I say, I just think they just expect too much of these athletes. These athletes should not be role models to your children. These athletes, sports is something that we watch for fun and entertainment. These athletes are nothing more than that. Period. I know your kids wear their shoes and your kids want to be like them. A lot of these fatherless kids, they look at these athletes just a little bit differently than people who do have fathers in their lives and so on. But I just think you're asking for way too much of these athletes to be robotic and not ever have any kind of human-like emotions whatsoever. Like, you're bugging. Yeah, I would be upset too if I was Odell and we were losing 30 to 7 or something like that in a divisional game. Yeah, I would be pissed too. And then on top of that, I don't have any good numbers. Yeah. So I mean, what do you expect? We see these athletes, we see these sports debate shows, and you'll see Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless chew each other out. I remember one time Skip got so upset his face turned red. He's pounding on the desk. It's my turn. It's my turn. And Shannon screaming and yelling and yada yada. You see it all the time on these shows where they get passionate, they get emotional, they get upset, they get angry. Sometimes you have a little slip up, you forget where you are. It is what it is. I don't see anybody calling Skip Bayless out for banging on tables and acting like a child on Undisputed. It happens. So I just think sports media is a little hypocritical, and they definitely need to dial back and take in notion of what Odell said, because y'all hold these athletes way too responsible for every little thing that they do. Yeah.